JJK 236 is probably the craziest chapter we've gone throughout the whole series. With the death of Gojo Satoru, Jujutsu Kaisen has taken a turn. Most of us knew that for the story to progress, Gojo would have had to be removed. However, some were very disappointed with the execution of this chapter. In this video, I'll be explaining some things that may have been unclear and giving my thoughts on Gege's execution of Gojo's death. If you enjoy this content and would like to see more of it, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. On leak day, the translations obviously weren't the best, so it was thought that Gojo in his dialogue with his dead comrades said that he wouldn't have been able to be Sukuna even if Sukuna didn't have the 10 Shadows technique. Now this had a lot of fans going wild for good reason, considering that Gojo dominated a good portion of the fight, nearly even killing Sukuna in some instances. It has been made very clear to us that throughout this fight, Maharaga has had a huge impact. If we were to remove Maharaga from this particular fight, Sukuna would be dead. Fortunately, the TCB scans cleared some things up. What Gojo said was that he probably would have struggled even if Sukuna didn't have the 10 Shadows technique. I think this is a much more fair statement since it gives respect to both Gojo's and Sukuna's strength. Gojo here acknowledges Sukuna's intelligence and fighting prowess, and although some fans believe that Sukuna would have lost without the 10 Shadows, Gojo's comments on Sukuna not giving it his all allows for ambiguity regarding what would have actually happened if Gojo and Sukuna fought all out with their own abilities. We also get clarification on whose father Gojo was talking about. It's confirmed that Gojo wasn't talking about his own father but rather Megumi's father. As we know, Gojo didn't get the opportunity to tell Megumi what happened to Toji, so he laments this, but then says it's fine since he asked Shoko to take care of that. During the soul interaction, we also get this mention of going north or south, which I think is a metaphor for reincarnation or staying deceased. When Nanami talks about this, he's referring to his final moments in Shibuya where he saw Haibara before dying, and he chooses to go south, meaning he chooses to accept his death. Now I'd say that this metaphor was simply included to portray the decision that all sorcerers have when faced with death. You could argue that it hints at Gojo choosing to go north, but by the end of the interaction, I just don't think there's enough evidence to come to that conclusion. Gojo ends the dialogue by saying to the principal, "I thought you said no sorcerer dies without regrets. Now I'm hoping that this isn't a dream." So from that remark, it seems as though Gojo is actually okay with dying and is doing so without regrets. The scene then switches back to the present where we see Sukuna explaining how he managed to cut Gojo. He says that he used Maharaga as a model to show him how to bypass infinity. Since Maharaga's adaptation is continuous, he came up with two ways to bypass infinity. The first way was through changing the very essence of his cursed energy, however this wasn't something Sukuna could do as it was impossible. So Sukuna waited for another way, which Maharaga showed to be changing the target of leaving this man. By changing the target from Gojo to space itself, Maharaga was able to cut Gojo and Sukuna manages to replicate this. For those of you that don't understand, it's important to remember how Gojo's infinity works. Fundamentally, it divides a finite amount of space an infinite amount of times. Because Sukuna can cut space, he would be cutting the space that was being divided. So if there is no space, there would be nothing for infinity to divide, and hence nothing to stop Sukuna's attack. I think this was a great way to bypass infinity, and I strongly disagree with the fans who call this an arse pull. Sukuna has shown himself to be very calculated and knowledgeable, so it's no surprise that a genius of Jujutsu would pull this off. That being said, I think this also makes him terribly overpowered. With Sukuna able to cut space, there comes the implication that one's cursed energy reinforcement would be rendered irrelevant. Since all things occupy space, there is nothing that Sukuna cannot cut. So unless this is a one-time ability, which I don't see why it would be, things don't look too great for everyone, especially Kashimo. As we know, Kashimo has a curse technique that he can only use once and has since planned to use it on Sukuna. The details of this curse technique is still a mystery to us, but it looks like it will finally be revealed in the next chapter. Like I mentioned before, I don't see why Sukuna wouldn't just use Cleave and Dismantle since I don't think Kashimo has any defense against it. However, I can imagine Sukuna aligning with Kashimo to attack first or Kashimo immediately engaging in battle, which will get him to show off his curse technique. It's interesting to see that Kashimo, despite everything he has seen Sukuna pull off, still wants to fight Sukuna. I can only conclude that this hidden curse technique of his is something extremely special, and will almost certainly do a significant amount of damage to Sukuna. Whether or not it will kill Sukuna is obviously not clear, but I think that even if Kashimo does beat Sukuna, it doesn't necessarily prove anything since he's fighting a fatigued Sukuna. I guess he will just have to make do with this opportunity since it's obvious that there are sorcerers from the main crew who want to kill Sukuna. To be honest, I'm disappointed with the way Gege handled Gojo's death. I remember reading the leaks for the first time and thinking that I had missed a page or even a chapter, but unfortunately I was wrong. Gege decided that the jump from the last panel of chapter 235 to Gojo's death was a good decision. You could argue that it was done for shock or to portray how fast everything happened, but I just don't buy that since he could have ended chapter 235 with a slash from Sukuna, then written 236 as it is right now. That would have afforded Gojo more respect. Also, it has been confirmed that Gojo is dead, and it surprises me that he didn't make a last-ditch effort to heal himself or at least slow down his death. When Yuki fought Kenjaku, despite being split in half, she was able to use her curse energy, so I assumed that Gojo would have done the same, but I guess not. All in all, I'd say the chapter was alright. Sukuna's method of bypassing infinity was brilliant, but I can't help but wonder, was there really nothing Gojo could do to avoid the slash? Maybe I'm overthinking it, but let me know what you guys thought. Were you satisfied with how Gojo's death was handled? Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you guys next time.